Hello everyone, this is SWTOR Snoopy here, back with another video. Today I have for you guys another Star Wars Republic discussion episode. In today's episode, we're going to be asking the question of, will the Onslaught expansion bring players back? Since the newest SWTOR expansion has been announced, I thought it would be a good time to make a discussion on if this expansion will help drive players to return. In this video, there will be talking points on the screen and in the description down below. This will allow you guys to jump to a particular point that I talk about and to follow the video in an easier manner. Anyways, that's all I have for this intro, so let's jump right into this discussion. Alrighty guys, so the first talking point is going to be, yes, a new expansion is good. Now, personally, I'm on board with this. I think that a new expansion will help with players returning to the game, just mainly because an expansion is a lot of content being added at once, and a lot of players are more likely to look back at the game if they hear a lot of new content is showing up. And it's kind of different compared to, say, an update, like with OSIS, for example. Because while OSIS did add a new daily area, and also later added an instance operation boss, it's still quite not on the scale of a full-blown expansion. Now, a lot of people could argue that the new expansion might not have as much content compared to other expansions, and some people might say that that could kind of drive some players away, actually. But at the same time, I feel like no matter what, when a new expansion is being announced and it's going to launch, you're bound to get players returning pretty quickly to see what's up and to see all the stuff that's been added. Another good thing with this expansion, Onslaught in particular, is that to get it, all you have to do is subscribe for a month. So I imagine a lot of people, whether or not they're going to stay for more than a month, it's perfect, it's a perfect opportunity to sub for a month to quickly see what's being added and then deciding from there. So personally, I think that no matter what, not only with just Onslaught, I think that whenever this game and or any other MMO gets an expansion, you're bound to see a quick exponential increase in population, since it will bring some of the returning players and new players. But the main question is going to be, will that retention stay? Will people stay depending on how the content is? But to quickly summarize, as I said with this talking point, is I think a new expansion is going to be really good for the game. We still don't have all of the details just yet at the time of recording this video, but with what we currently have, I think it's going to be really good. And I also think that a lot of players are likely to return just to check it out. But once again, it all really comes down to that player retention and if players will stay afterwards. So I'm going to also be looking at the opposing argument, which gets me into my second talking point, is simply no, an expansion won't work. Now, there are some players that have said and have voiced their opinion, saying that they don't believe an expansion will quite bring players back. This is mainly due to the fact that some players, as I quickly mentioned, feel like this expansion doesn't add enough to really drive players to return. And I can understand why people would say that, and it's understandable since it doesn't seem like it's going to be like a Rise of the Cartel or Shadow of Revan, but I think we're going to get pretty close to that in terms of content. I mean, based on what we have right now, we do know we're getting an operation, a flashpoint, new story, a bunch of different things, a level cap. We're getting all those cool things added, which is good. But I think some people feel like there's not going to be enough content to really bring players back. And I feel like it's kind of, once again, I can understand why people would make this argument, but I don't believe that's going to end up being the case. The one thing I could see end up being true is players could come into the game. They could feel like there's not enough content after playing for a month, and they might leave afterwards. But I think in the initial phase of Onslaught being released, there's going to be likely a nice little increase in population, since all the players are trying to see what's been added. But I think personally, when it comes down to that argument, I think that we're going to see an increase, and then it's just going to really come down to what happens later on. So I guess that's really all I have for that talking point. Just very straightforward. I can understand why people would say it, but I don't believe that's going to end up being the case. And this gets, in my opinion, this gets to the main part of this discussion, is the third talking point, which is, will that momentum stay? And once again, this is what I've kind of been building up to in this discussion. And I guess the initial question of will Onslaught bring players back is correct. I think it will bring players back. But this question is going to really come down to if people will stay afterwards. Now, I know with myself, I'm going to continue to play the game even with no matter how the expansion goes. I personally think the expansion is going to be really good for the game, and I think it's going to be really exciting. But the question is the other players that play it, because some people might dislike some things that happen, some people might like stuff, and we're going to have to see if the momentum is going to carry over. Because it could go many different ways. We could see a scenario where there's a lot of momentum, a lot of hype for the expansion, people are still continuing to play the content and they're enjoying it, so they're just going to continue subbed, and some of the population is going to stay, or something could possibly divide some of the population and cause some people to leave. I don't see this likely happening where they're gonna somehow make a mistake with the expansion and it's gonna cause a lot of people to leave right off the bat. There most likely will be a slight dip in population after an expansion. Just typically after, I know most of the time after the first month or two, after things are starting to settle down, you might see a small dip. But I think that, based on what we've seen, I think this expansion is going to be really good for the game. But since it still is pretty far away, all of us don't really know how it's going to eventually turn out and how everything's going to be. I know based on the information we have, I'm really excited, and I really think this expansion is going to be good. But at the same time, we are going to have to wait and see if the momentum is going to carry over with all of the players. Because that's the big thing there, is if all the players are really enjoying the content, then more people are bound to stay subbed. But at the same time, if there's some lingering issues that appear, then we might see the exact opposite. And that gets me into my final talking point, is new content is a step in the right direction. And I feel like this is kind of a given, but I think the announcement of the expansion, whether they have everything completed or not, is very good for the game. I know that this gets me hyped, and I know that it definitely gets a lot of other players hyped, but hearing the fact that we're going to get a new expansion in the game is really good news. And I also think it's going to really bring players back to see what's up. And I think that's the biggest thing there, is because I want this game to succeed, and I know all the players that also play it want it to succeed. And that's the biggest thing there, is if it succeeds, the expansion eventually succeeds, then that's going to be a good sign for the game as a whole. And then not only that, just getting new content is bound to get people hyped. Who can go wrong with getting some new operations and flashpoints and such? I always am one for new stuff to be added to the game. And it's also good that it's you just have to be subscribed for a month to obtain it. Because I feel like that will also bring more players back to return, as they don't have to pay money for an expansion. They can jump right in, just get a quick 30-day sub time, see how they like it, and eventually decide if they're going to stay with the game. But overall, my main conclusion with this is I believe that Onslaught will bring players back. The main thing we're going to have to look at is how the expansion is kind of seen by the players, and that will kind of determine if momentum will stay and players will stick around for longer than the first month. So I think that's where I'm going to end this discussion. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.